Welcome to Raw Discourse. My name is Lombe. This evening, we look at the Constitution of Zambia, a law that governs the country. How many of us understand our Constitution? What it entails, how it guides us, how are we affected? Those are the questions that many may have even as the country is debating a possible amendment of the Constitution. This will not be the first time that the Constitution will be amended. It has gone through several amendments. This could actually be the fourth time that it is going to be successfully amended should it go through. Anyway, with all those questions that you and I may have, we have in studio today legal counsel John Kayuni, who is managing partner of JK and Partners, with us in studio to help us break down the Constitution of Zambia, the lawmaking process, how important this Constitution is to our country, why you and I need to know it and understand it. So help me welcome. Pardon me, I don't even know why I'm mincing my words. Maybe because when I look at the Constitution, it's already too bulky, and I'm wondering, how am I ever going to finish it? But hey, you don't have to worry about that. So help me welcome legal counsel John Kayuni. Welcome to Raw Discourse.
Thank you very much, madam, and good evening, viewers.
You know, I'm looking at the Constitution on your table, and I'm wondering, I have a question. Have you read everything in this Constitution?
Yes, I've actually read everything in the Constitution.
Back to back, cover to
cover. For the simple reason that the Constitution is like a Bible to the lawyer. Every lawyer has a duty to defend the law and the Constitution. Mm-hmm. We actually swear to defend the Constitution. So it's the highest law which we have, and in a layman's term, I can equate the Constitution to the Bible, to the Christian, so to say.
The Bible we read when going to church every Sunday.
Yes.
Maybe help us understand. How would you define the Constitution? What is a Constitution?
Right. In terms of definition, we can look at the Constitution from either a narrow angle or a broader angle. But in all these two elements, a constitution is simply a set of rules, regulations, and laws by which the people have agreed to be governed. Mm-hmm. It is actually the rules which governs the people. In this case, when we look at it from the broader angle, it is those laws, regulations, customs, either written or unwritten, which dictates how the people should be governed. Mm-hmm. And at broader angle, the Constitution actually constitutes all the organs of government. In short, the Constitution creates parliament, it creates the judiciary, it creates the executive. Every organ of government stems from the Constitution. So that is how important a Constitution is. You must be aware that we have different sets of constitutions. Mm-hmm. However, there may be a mixture. In other countries, you realize that you don't have a single document which you can call as a constitution. We say they have unwritten constitution, meaning they have so many rules and regulations which constitutes or makes up the constitution. Mm-hmm. So you could find one set of laws on human rights, another set of laws on the executive, another set of laws on the National Assembly, and various laws which regulates the conduct of governance. Now, when we talk of a written constitution, we are simply talking about one single document which you call as a constitution. For example, the United States of America has a single document you can call as a constitution. Zambia has a single set of document which we can call as a constitution. It's written, mm-hmm. You understand? And from this written law, all these laws actually derives their authority from this constitution. And apart from that, one of the issues you notice in the Zambian constitution is that it's actually chapter 1. It's the starting point. Mm-hmm. All these laws, as I said, stems or derives their authority from the constitution. This is the reason why when you read the current constitution, Article 1, Sub-Article 3 provides that this constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it governs and binds every organ and human being, and that every law which is against the constitution or inconsistent with the constitution is basically null and void to that extent. So that is how important the constitution is. All sets of laws, talk about the penal code, talk about media laws, they must conform to this law called the constitution. If there's a conflict between another law and the constitution actually, prevails. Hence the doctrine of supremacy of the constitution, because it is above all laws. It's a grand norm, to use the Kelsey's theory of law. It is the highest.
The highest law.
Yes. So in Zambia, we are talking about the first law, which is the constitution, is the grand norm, and then below it, we have this other set of laws. So basically, that is how important the constitution is.
So you're calling it a set of rules and laws that govern the country.
Yes.
When we talk about rules and laws, how are they related and how are they different from each other? Because sometimes people choose what they feel they should follow and what they shouldn't follow, even as we understand the Constitution.
Okay. Remember, I said the starting point is that all these other laws must conform to the Constitution.
Yes.
So basically, we have two sets of laws. We have constitutional laws. These are the superior laws, you understand? Then we have subordinate laws. These are the ones which are subordinated to the Constitution. And then all citizens are mandated to actually follow the law. When you read the Constitution, the same Article 1, Sub-Article 5, clearly tells us that every citizen of the Republic has a right to defend and protect the Constitution from tinkering or overthrow of the Constitution. It's a duty of every Zambian to defend and protect the Constitution from any abrogations. Now, apart from that, when you read Article 128 of the Constitution, it actually also gives another set of organ with the mandate also to protect the Constitution, and that is the Constitutional Court of Zambia. Of course, the lawgiver is the people. The preamble to every constitution, like this constitution, clearly states that we, the people, by virtue of our representative gathered in parliament, do hereby give and enact to ourselves this constitution. So, in terms of jurisprudence, the lawgiver is the people. Understand? The people come together and decide to say, look, this is how we want to be governed. We are giving ourselves this law called the Constitution. You understand? Apart from that, we are also mandating our representative to actually also make this other subordinate legislation. Now, coming to your question, every citizen, regardless of rank, has a duty to obey the law. Mind you, ignorance of the law is no defense. In fact, as lawyers, from His Excellency, we have a duty, first of all, to defend and protect the Constitution. So, every citizen has a right and a duty to obey and defend this Constitution. It's not negotiable.
So you've spoken about subordinate laws and, supreme laws. Are you able to give us an example of each? Some that we may even know are existing, but the people watching us may not even be aware to say, oh, so this is the law that is, and this is.
Okay, the supreme law we have is the Constitution, Chapter 1 of the Laws of Zambia. And as I said, all these other laws must conform to this Constitution. Now, we have so many subordinate legislation. One of them being the Penal Code. We have what is now the latest called the Cyber Security Act. We have two sets of laws which were enacted on 18th April 2025, Act number 3 and Act number 4 of 2025. These are the ones trying to regulate the cyberspace. Now, what is more interesting about these laws for the citizens is that if you feel those laws don't conform to the Constitution, you have a right to actually challenge the constitutionality of those laws. In fact, our laws provides for a two-tier way of challenging these laws. One is via the Article 28, which provides that if any citizen feels that a law which has been passed is likely to infringe on his human rights, he can go to the High Court and petition and challenge that law. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. The second one is Article 128 of the Constitution, which provides that, look, if you feel that any law which has been passed violates the Constitution, you can move the Constitutional Court to actually challenge that law on ground that it is unconstitutional. Because remember, the guiding principle is that all laws or subordinate legislation which are enacted must conform to the Constitution. And any law which doesn't abide by the dictates of the Constitution is unconstitutional and will be severed from the statutes, and it shouldn't be implemented. Now, until that severance is done by the courts, our duty as citizens is basically to obey the law.
So how do you obey what you do not understand? One thing that I've noticed in our Constitution is it has quite a number of jargon. It has so much jargon. It has big words, some that the layman cannot even understand.
Okay.
And so maybe the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think our society understands and knows the Constitution?
Okay, allow me to answer these in three ways. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, every citizen has a right to know the law, and it is their duty to know the law. This is because the law provides that ignorance of the law is not a defense.
That's true.
So all of us have got a mandate and obligation to read the laws which are passed by Parliament. It's not only an obligation by lawyers. No, every citizen of this nation has a duty to obey the law. Secondly, in terms of the Constitution itself explicitly provides that every citizen has a right to protect and defend this Constitution from either manipulation or from any breach by any other person. Now, I have never carried out a research where I can convincingly say that the citizens of Zambia are ignorant about the laws of Zambia. I have never done that research. All I would say, and which is a very positive thing, is that there appears to be a greater interest in the laws of Zambia, considering what has been debated in social media. And that to me is a positive thing.
Yes.
Every citizen should take interest in the laws of Zambia, because ignorance of the law is no defense. So all I would say for now is that I think a lot of citizens are aware of their rights. A lot of citizens are aware of the laws of Zambia. Now, coming to the Constitution, I would simply divide the Constitution in what I may call as 7 elements. You have the guiding principles from the preamble up to Article 8. They guide what we call the principles of the Constitution. Now, apart from that, we have the second part, which talks about governance, the branches of government. So the Constitution creates the executive, for example,
yes,
the branches of the executive, so many executive branches. It talks about office of the president, the qualification for one to become president. It talks about the branches of the executive, the officers of the executive like the DPP, the Attorney General, the permanent secretaries, and a lot of commissions. Apart from that, it goes further, because in terms of the executive, we have 2 types of executive. We have the main executive, which constitutes the main governance, as well as local government. So the Constitution also talks about local government, you understand?
Yes.
Who qualifies to be who? How are mayors supposed to be elected? How are councillors supposed to be elected? That is part of the Constitution. Apart from that, the Constitution creates the legislature, which is simply a combination of the presidents as well as the National Assembly. So we have rules on who qualifies to be a member of parliament, how is a member of parliament elected, how are they removed, and all those procedures in the National Assembly. They are there in the Constitution. Now, the other organ of government which is created is basically the judiciary. The Constitution provides for the principles which govern adjudication. You understand? From there, it also creates types of courts. We have the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court, the Court of Appeal, High Court, subordinate courts, local courts, etc., isn't it? So all those are provided for in the Constitution with their functions and qualifications. They are there. Apart from that, we now have other principles of the Constitution. For example, what we call the directive principles of the Constitution. These are principles which regulate governance. Things like loyalty, respect for human rights, etc. Apart from that, the Constitution also provides for human rights, and this stems from Article 11 up to Article 27. These are the rights which a human being has, or any person has, by virtue of being a human being. Now, look, I know we'll talk about this later. The other thing which you notice in the Constitution is that it talks about itself. How is it made, for example? It also provides for how is it amended. All those issues are constitutional issues which are provided for there. So every citizen must read those. And the drafters of the current Constitution have done it in such a way that it is very easy to understand some of these clauses. Where you are in doubt, the law provides that you have a duty to take the interpretation to the Constitutional Court. So basically, the Constitution actually provides for the governance structure, the human rights, and all bodies of governance within the Republic of Zambia. Actually, you'll be amazed that even the country Zambia is actually created in the Constitution. There shall be a Republic of Zambia. You understand? And what you call Zambia is actually defined there in the Constitution. So that is how important the Constitution is. It creates all sorts of organs you can think of. Understand? When you talk about the media is created there as an institution by the Constitution. Talk about the police service, you find an article within the Constitution creating the police service. Talk about the military or the defense force, it is created. You understand? So it is actually this law which constitutes other organs of government. So it is important that all of us find the time to read this important legislation.
I love how you have broken it down so well when it comes to how the Constitution clearly explains every structure of governance and government. Let's bring it down to the ordinary Zambian who has to even defend this Constitution because it is being given to them in the Constitution that they have to defend it. How does this Constitution directly affect their lives, whether they know it or not? Because like you've said, ignorance is not a defense. So even when you don't know it, a law can either work for you or against you.
The Constitution is the foundation of governance. You understand? Secondly, the Constitution also recognizes and entrenches. I know human rights are created per se by the Constitution because human rights are these rights which we all have by virtue of being human. You understand? But however, Article 11 to Article 27 entrenches these rights. Understand? So, as a human being, your protection is actually given or recognized there in the Constitution. Now, these are debatable academics. The Constitution provides that it shall be translated in all languages so that everyone is able to read it and understand it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've never seen the Constitution in my Tonga language. I've never seen it in the Bemba language here in the Coca Belt or Nyanja. But that issue is addressed in the Constitution. The Constitution provides that it shall be translated in all languages. So, one would say, maybe those who can't read. But remember, we are coming from the premise that ignorance
It's not a
is
defense.
not a defense.
And that's the
So
concern.
I would urge those who are privileged, like journalists, the lawyers, the churches, to disseminate this document, to make it simple and explain it in a very simple manner to our relatives out there in the village. Because the Constitution is not an elitist document, you understand? This is a set of documents which affects all of us. It binds all of us. So it is not for the educated. The Constitution is a bedrock of the Zambian economy. Talk of the Bank of Zambia itself. It's a creature of the Constitution. You understand? Talk of economic rights there. Talk of the rights to health. Talk of your rights to freedom of expression. You understand? Talk of your rights to belong to any trade union. Your right to life. All those issues are basically constitutional matters.
Now, I'm sorry to cut you, legal counsel. I will take you a bit back. You're saying, yes, in the Constitution, it is guided that the Constitution should be translated in various languages. Zambia has 72 official tribes, and under these 72 tribes, we have dialects even under them. So we have more languages being spoken in the country. A large part of Zambia is still rural. We can't run away from that. Every province you go to has... You hear things like Ndola rural, Kabwe rural, Lusaka rural. You have even the villages themselves. And these are people we are expecting to defend a constitution. If, let's say, they can't even yet speak fluently in English, understand a word in English, and the constitution has not been translated to even fit their capability to read it in their language. So how do we bridge this gap of people understanding the constitution even before we go to them knowing what the lawmaking process appears to be?
Okay, I'll answer that issue indirectly. The starting point is that the authority to govern comes from the people. And the second premise is that it is the people who creates constitution. You understand? The constitution does not create human beings.
The human beings create the constitution.
The human beings create the constitution. You understand? And basically, in terms of constitutional theory, human beings are above the constitution. You understand? Because they are the lawgiver. They are the one who gives the constitution. Now, a long time ago, it was easy to assemble a group of people and ask them about what they want, what was called direct democracy. But with the increase in population, this has become impossible. What we have now is indirect democracy, where you actually, choose representative called members of parliament and delegate your authority to them to make laws on your behalf. You understand? And there lies now the duty of parliamentarians to get back to their constituents and explain some of these things to say, look, where you sent me, there is this issue, you understand, which is constitutional in nature, and we are here to explain the implication, you understand? Because that's the mandate of parliamentarians, to go back to where they got the authority and explain, to say, look, there is this constitutional proposal, there is this. They explain that. Apart from that, those of us who are privileged, laws, human rights institution, have got a mandate. When you look at Section 4 of the Law Association of Zambia, it's wide. It actually gives them the right to defend the rule of law and also to make sure that some of these things are explained to the people. I hold a different view, and my view is that LAS has not done enough to sensitize the people on, on constitutional issues. I entirely agree with you that a lot of people are actually ignorant about the Constitution. And we must take responsibility for that. Because we are privileged to understand the Constitution. But how many times have we ever seen members of the Law Association of Zambia, for example, going to Masaiti or going to my village in Wengwa or going to Chifunaburi to explain some of these issues?
And sorry, not to cut you short, legal counsel, but just a simple law as simple as littering. Someone peeing in the road. That's against the law.
Yes.
But if someone is picked up and taken to the police to say, I found this person urinating in the road, it's against the law. Can something be done? The person first of all being apprehended will refuse and say, where did you want me to ease myself from? Or a lot of people are doing that. Secondly, people on social media would take pictures of cars that would be littering and send these pictures and have them circulate. But even the local authority, on their own, an authority that is supposed to enforce this law, when the citizens bring it to their attention, are quite relaxed on implementing some of those laws. And so it brings concern to say, if something as simple as that helps us keep our environments clean is not even thoroughly checked or even, enforced, how much more life-threatening rules that someone feels maybe because I didn't know, or if I can get away with it, I can talk to someone. How does someone now get to even know that they can defend the Constitution to that level, to that degree?
Okay. Look, one of the functions of the law, be it constitutional or any other law, is to provide regulations and orderliness in society. So, you see the argument from the Marxian concept of the law that the function of the law is to promote order. Are you with me? Now, you might not find a direct law in the Constitution to say if you litter, this is what should happen. But the Constitution creates a body called the local government. You understand?
Yes.
A council is created there. And then out of that, we have the Local Government Act, which prescribes the functions to various councils. And one of the issues is to do with littering.
Yes.
You understand? Now, between you and me, to be punished in law is not an easy thing, because the law says for you to be punished, you must have done a wrong thing and you must have a wrong intention to do that. Or if you didn't have a wrong intention,
you still did the wrong thing.
This thing is basically wrong because it's a strict liability. You are liable regardless of your wrongdoing. Now, I'm not a sociologist. Some of this conduct, you understand? Because look, in the sociological field of the law, it says law is there for the benefits of society. You understand? That it exists to serve society. And in society, we have these social institutions, human beings, etc., etc. Now, some of this conduct, though debatable, can be attributed to culture. You understand? The culture of throwing litter. You can't blame the Constitution for that. It is the individual who is doing that. You understand? And then we have enough laws which addresses that issue. And they may not be constitutional, but we have these other subordinate legislation which actually, looks at that conduct. Now, there now comes the issue. Even if you have committed a crime of littering, the Constitution provides that you are innocent until you are taken to the court of law, which court of law will prove you guilty. Are you with me? The same Constitution also says, look, even if you found me red-handed throwing litter, I have not lost my right as a human being. I am still a human being entitled to these rights, isn't it? You are not supposed to torture me. You are not supposed to ill-treat me. You are not supposed to over-detain me. All those pre-trial rights which are constitutional must be observed. You understand? And that is where the importance of the Constitution lies in. One can be caught of committing an infraction, but it doesn't cease to be a human being. It doesn't lose its constitutional right, not until a court of competent jurisdiction says, you did this, therefore you are going to lose your freedom, we are sending you to prison, isn't it? Yes. So that is how important this thing is. Now, you cannot have laws in secret. Laws should be sensitized, you understand?
To the public.
To the public. The public must be made aware that there is this law. This is because ignorance is not,
a defense.
A defense. And this is where all of us who are privileged, have a duty to sensitize the public to say, there's this law. You are supposed to obey this law. If you feel this law doesn't address your rights, go to court, and do it in a legal manner. Mind you, Section 43 of the Penal Code provides for the offense of treason. And one of the ingredients of treason is that it is endeavoring to change a law by force. You know that? Where you just wake up and say, I'm not going to obey this cybersecurity law. That is treason. You know how difficult it is. So, in a simple manner, we have a duty to read our laws of Zambia.
So whether you agree with it or not, the law can either work for you or against you.
Basically, I agree with you. Look, and this is where, in jurisprudence, the law is seen as an instrument of social change. You understand? If we have got good laws, we have good investment, we have society developing, it is possible that you can have a law which stifles development. You understand? This is the reason why the law of a lawyer in society is very critical. Because the law should be used as an instrument of social change. You understand? And the law should not be static. You know, the law is living. It keeps changing to reflect the ethos or changes in society. For example, the cyber laws have come in as a result of issues to do with the cyber abuse, isn't it?
Yes, cyberspace, because it's growing rapidly. We are slowly catching up. Some people are abusing it. Some people are using it for good.
Yes. And you could say, oh, it's a positive thing. The other person will say, no, this is a negative thing. But those who feel it's a negative thing have a duty to go to court and challenge that thing.
Maybe before we even get to court and challenging it, legal counsel, I think let's run through the entire process. We do have the Constitution, which is the supreme law. And we have these subordinate laws that are, bills that come in and, are enacted as laws or, signed in as laws. Let's go through the entire process. Before a law becomes a law, what is the entire process like? And when can people be involved? Is there an option for them to be involved before it even gets to Parliament? Or are they only considered after it becomes law?
Okay. The starting point is that the power to make laws here in the country resides in Parliament. It is the duty of members of Parliament to make laws, be it constitutional law or subordinate legislation. Now, the Constitution itself has created organs of government which are involved in quite a number of things. For example, we have a body, a government institution called Zambia Law Development Agency. The function of that agency is to conduct research in society, consult the people, and make proposals to laws which should be passed or amended. You understand? Now, that is one. We also have the executive wing of government. Under the Inquiries Act, they can actually create an inquiry. You know that. This is where now the president can constitute an organ of government to inquire about how certain laws should be changed.
Are they working for the people? Are they working against the people?
Now, when all these things are done, there are two ways under which laws in Zambia are made, before I even talk about the process. One, you can approach a member of parliament and say, I want this law to be introduced in parliament. So the member of parliament will go and consult drafters, they will draft that bill, and you can prevent what we call a private member's bill in parliament. Of course, the constitution says that, look, a member of parliament cannot introduce a bill which has got financial implication without authority from Minister of Finance or the executive, isn't it?
Yes.
That is one. The second one is where the government itself, through a body called Minister of Justice, remember, under Minister of Justice, there are departments, and one of the departments is the Attorney General Chamber. Understand? Under that department, we have what is called Legislative Drafting Department. We have drafters. A drafter is somebody who is trained in drafting these laws, making the laws, isn't it?
Yes.
So, what happens at Ministry of Justice is that a concerned government department, let's say, let me talk about Ministry of Lands. You know, they want to amend the laws governing them. So they will come up with a bill and take it to Attorney General, and the Attorney General chambers will advise. From there, the bill will go to cabinet. You understand? The minister responsible will do what is called a cabinet memo. So they will debate there in cabinet, and once cabinet approves it, it goes back to the Attorney General for fine-tuning, and then they will draft a proper bill and give it to the minister responsible to go and present in Parliament. Now, there in Parliament, the law is very clear. You have the minister introducing that bill under what is called the first reading.
Yes, the first reading.
You understand? During first reading, it's basically an introduction
Of the bill.
this is the bill, ABCD, and then from there it will be published. You understand? And from there you have the second reading where it will be introduced again, and it will go into committees. There are various committees within Parliament, and it will be debated. The committees also have got a mandate to come back to the people and consult. And a lot of professionals do appear before those committees and make submissions. And after those committee stages, we have the third reading. Now it will be finally debated in Parliament. You see a lot of debate in Parliament, isn't it? After it passes the third reading, it is now taken to the president to sign. Now, the president has two obligations. He can either agree with that bill and sign it. It becomes law. Or he would say, no, I'm not comfortable with that. And then he will send it back to Parliament for them to make changes to what he has said, isn't it? Of course, now the Constitution says he cannot refuse for the third time. If the same thing goes there, he has to sign it, or automatically if he refuses, it dissolves Parliament, isn't it? Now, this is the procedure for an ordinary bill. Are you with me?
Yes.
It can either be introduced by a private MP, or it can be introduced by an official minister. You understand? Now, in terms of the Constitution,
The Constitution itself, the elephant in the room.
yes, when you are introducing a constitutional amendment, there are certain principles which are embedded in the Constitution. You understand? And one of them being that cabinet must approve those amendments. Mind you, there is one body in government which drafts these bills. It's the Attorney General chambers. You understand? After it has been approved by cabinet, it is presented by the Minister of Justice in Parliament. And then after some time, the Constitution provides for a period which this thing should be published. Afterwards, it will be taken back for second reading, then committee stage, and then third reading, etc., etc., and then it will be amended. You understand? The Constitution will be amended. Now, the Constitution provides for two sorts of amending itself, two processes. You understand? One is that if you want to amend an article relating to human rights from Article 11 to 27, you can't amend that without a referendum. You understand?
Yes.
So you are supposed to go back to the people and, using the Referendum Act, conduct a referendum where all people who are eligible to vote into that referendum authorizes it. Once that is done, you take it back. Are you with me? Secondly, Article 79 of the Constitution also provides that, look, you cannot amend the amendment clause. Remember, Article 79 is the one which provides power to Parliament to amend the Constitution. So when you want to touch that amendment clause, the law says, no, you must have a referendum. You understand? So go back to the people and consult. Now, there is again a new innovation in this new Constitution which says, look, certain clauses again, you cannot amend them without consulting the people. You understand? For example, you cannot amend the name Zambia and say, we want to change Zambia. The name of the country shall be called David. No, you can't. You need to go back to the people. Are you with me? Secondly, you cannot abolish certain government institutions like courts. You can't. You need to go back to the people. So now, when you look at this constitution, it simply talks about, in a layman's term, two ways of amending the constitution. There is the ordinary amendment where you don't need the referendum. Here you just need the majority of members of parliament. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. Now, you have this entrenched amendment like on human rights, mm-hmm. the amendment clause itself, and the amendment of certain clauses
within the Constitution.
Yes. Then you need a referendum. Now, the elephant in the room is that the Minister of Justice, in consultation with various stakeholders and through cabinet, decided to say, look, there are certain clauses which are not controversial, to use our own words. You understand? Mm-hmm. These clauses could be amended without a referendum. And one of the clauses they want to amend is to increase the number of MPs
in parliament, delimitation.
The nominated members of parliament. Mm-hmm. There's a formula they use. They are saying, look, we can increase the number of MPs which His Excellency can nominate. Mm-hmm. Currently is at 8, isn't it?
Yes.
But they are proposing to say we need to increase these to a certain threshold. And their justification is that it will give powers to the appointing authority to actually have what is called proportional representation of women, the youths, and other marginalized people. That is a very debatable issue. Understand?
Very debatable,
but
because
that is the justification. The second issue they are trying to do is, look, the population of Zambia has grown. You understand?
Much, yes.
And we cannot just be at 156 constituencies. They want to increase the number of constituencies based on what other government bodies have done, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And they are saying, look, because now the current constitution says every 10 years you must have what is called delimitation.
Yes.
Cut, and increase or reduce, isn't it?
Yes.
So they are saying we have this law which tells us 10 years ever since this thing was passed, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So they want to delimitate the constituencies. And economically it makes sense. When you look at it from the model of the CDF, it makes sense. But another school of thought will say, look, should we be amending the constitution because of the CDF? That is a debatable issue.
It is debatable, and this actually brings me to this question to say, we have members of parliament going into parliament and creating these laws. The concern that comes to the public now is the fact that members of parliament will come up with a law that may seem to either favor them or work against them, depending on when they are either in government or not in government. And so when we talk about laws and the process of amendment, when is it safe to amend the constitution for the people? Because now we have members of parliament who are either with the ruling party or against the ruling party. This has happened before during the times of the Patriotic Front. This has happened before, even during the MMD, government. This is happening now during the UPND government, where we are having government come in and, bring in a possible amendment. In the past, we've had some amendments that have gone through, and now we are having a time again. So if we're having members of parliament bring in a constitutional amendment and it's always this heated, because it will either work for the party in power or against the party in power, where are the people being considered in all this?
It's a loaded question. I'll get back to that when I look. Two critical issues which you must understand is that the Constitution is a legal document. Understand? Mm-hmm. But the other issue which you must also understand is that the Constitution addresses the issue of power. Political power lies in the Constitution. You understand? And it's one of the reasons why the world all over, governments have amended the Constitution to address the issue of power. You understand? So apart from the legality issue, the other reason why any government would want to amend the Constitution is because of the issue of political power. You understand? Because political power is constituted in the Constitution. You understand? Mm-hmm. And if you don't control or you don't actually address that in the Constitution, sorry to use the word control, then you'll be out of power.
It may work for you.
You understand?
Or it may not work for you.
Now, what is the best timing to amend the constitution? Anytime when you feel there's an issue which is constitution, which you need to address. You understand? This is the reason why, though a constitution must be durable, you understand? But remember, it's a living document.
And times are
You
constantly
understand?
changing.
And then, since the constitution reflects the ethos and the will of the people, sometimes the will of the people may change. You understand? If the will of the people is that let's have more members of parliament, you need to go to the constitution and have it amended so that that issue is addressed. If the will of the people is that let's have more women in parliament, you need to go to the constitution and address that issue within the constitution. If the will of the people is that let's have a lot of judges at promises, you need to go to the constitution and address that issue.
And which is why I'm asking where the people are, because when you look at the constitution, it gives the age limit. When you talk about youths and women, it's clear. You must be a Zambian. You must be of a certain age for you to, be eligible. You must have these documentations in place. So this is now at political party level. When you talk about women and youths having equal representation in parliament, does the constitution need to be amended for such?
All right. Remember, the mandate to govern was given to the UPND government. You understand?
Yes.
No any other body in Zambia has that mandate. And that takes us to the preamble. The preamble, if I may quote, reads, "We the people of Zambia, by virtue of we the people of Zambia, acknowledge the supremacy of God, declare this nation as a Christian nation, and give, give our powers to those members of parliament." You understand?
Yes.
So, what we have is indirect democracy. We have given our mandate to the ruling UPND government. You understand? And that mandate entails that instead of having people directly making the law, the power to make the law resolves or resides in the ruling party. You understand? Now, there are so many theories. One of the theories of constitutional making is basically consensus. They will tell you you need to agree. You understand? But let's not run away from the fact that in 2021, we unanimously gave the UPND government the mandate to make laws on our behalf, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, the question you would ask is, do they have the mandate and the numbers to do that? My answer is that they have. You understand? So whatever the ruling party is doing for now is within the law. You understand? It will be debatable to say, look, no, they haven't done ABCD, but look,
If it's within the law, it is within the law.
it is within the law. The constitution gives them the mandate to do what they are doing. You understand? Because remember, it is not Laz who has the mandate to govern. It's not the opposition who has the mandate to make laws. It is parliament collectively,
That
which
has the
constitutes the National Assembly and the presidency. You understand? These are the two bodies we gave power to make laws on our behalf.
So when
Now, coming to your question, whether the people were consulted or not, my answer will be, look, the people are represented by those in parliament. You understand? And for now, it has become exigence that certain articles of the constitution be amended to reflect what is happening. Coming to your issue, whether women or the youths are represented, I am aware that there's an article in the constitution which says when the president is making appointment, he must have regard to women, he must have regard to the youth, etc., etc., isn't it?
Yes.
Now, this same constitution limits that power because the president can only appoint, can only appoint 8. Now, they are saying to realize this, let's amend that law so that it's given the latitude probably to nominate more than what is currently prevailing. They are also saying let's change the constitution of public of the nation. You understand? What we have are basically what is called, universal direct representation, where you vote for people. Now, look, if you have taken note of Zambian politics, a lot of youths, women cannot make it. You understand? So there's a proposal to say, look, Probably let's go to proportional representation, where you reserve certain seats. These are for women. These are for disabled. These are for the youths, isn't it? But when you look at that, there's nothing in the Constitution. So if you were to achieve that, you need to go back to the Constitution and get that mandate. And this is what government is simply saying, to say, look, what we are doing, we are trying to do it for the people. And we are trying to bring in so many people on board to make the representation in parliament. And they are simply saying, can we change the way representation is done? And for them to change that, they need to go to the Constitution and amend
it. Well, I wish we could go on, because now I'm boiling and babbling with more questions. The funny thing, though, is some of the issues you've brought up and have clearly explained were some of the things that the previous government equally wanted to do. And they were heavily fought on it. And it ended up not going through. What has changed now?
Okay, what has changed now is that we have a different government in place.
But it's the same.
You understand?
It's similar.
When you look at Bill 10, one would argue that there are similar provisions in Bill 10 and similar provision in the current constitution. And this is why in constitutional making, timing is key. You understand? You may have the best intention, understand? But if your timing is wrong, even the best intention will be defeated.
That's why I asked you earlier on when the best time to amend the constitution could be.
Okay,
because we are just a year to elections, and these amendments are coming in.
Okay. My answer to your question is that, look, if you want to address the issue of election, the time is now. You understand? 12 months is quite a long time. You understand? We still have election in August. So if you are to increase the number of constituencies, the time is now. If you are to change the structure of the National Assembly, the time is now. You understand? If you have to change the number of nominated MPs, the time is now. You know, I was one person who had skepticals about Bill 10, and for the simple reason that the intention of Bill 10 was not noble. You understand? It had progressive clauses, but the other hidden intention was what was scaring, isn't it? I have looked at the proposed amendments, and I can tell you that I haven't seen anything threatening.
So how different is it from Bill 10?
For me, it's different. For me, what this bill is intending to address is simply the issue of political power.
That's this current amendment?
Yes. It simply addresses political power. That is it. Nothing more apart from political power. And there's a proposal that members of parliament should be members of the council. It was like that some 20 years ago. So they want to go back to that. Of course, in terms of good governance, one would argue otherwise. But basically what this amendment is proposing to do is to address the issue of political power. Nothing more. It is not touching on your Bill of Rights. It's not touching on your economic rights. Nothing but the issue of power. And remember, one of the critical issues which the Constitution must address is the issue of political power. And if you are to remain in governance and relevant as a ruling party, you must address that political power. And the only way you can do it is to go to the Constitution and address it there.
So what are some of the risks associated with amending a constitution, either too fast or recklessly or too frequent? Because today we will amend it for political power. Tomorrow someone may want to amend it for economic power. The other day another party or someone else want to amend it for another reason.
Okay, academically it is argued that you need a durable constitution. A constitution which will stand the test of time. But remember, the constitution, though durable, is not cast in stone. You understand? It must reflect the happening in society. So if the representative of the people, or if the people feels that they need to amend it to reflect what is happening, Parliament has the power to do that. Now, secondly, or conversely, and this is a political issue, if you want to amend the constitution and it fails, that is a political indictment. You know that? It simply means the people have cast a vote of no confidence in you. So that is how tricky it is. So the issue of amendment is not a simple issue. Because if it fails, it actually casts a negative political aspersion on you to say, look, the people have passed a vote of no confidence in you. And for you to recover from that, it will be difficult. You understand? So
I do understand.
this is why
And
the
I hope our
proponent of
viewers
this
do understand
amendment,
too.
I'm sure they have thought through that. Because remember, the amendment can be a for
Or against.
or, you know that. And if it goes well and good, we have to obey it. But if it doesn't, that will be a political indictment on the proponent of that.
Wow. Well, as we come to the end of our discussion this evening, Legal Counsel, what would be your final words to those watching on the importance? I know you've stressed it through and through, but a take-home note on how important it is for them to understand their constitution and defend it at all costs.
My advice to citizens is that you have a duty to defend and protect the Constitution from tinkering. You also have a duty as a good citizen to actually support government if you feel they are doing the right thing for you. And then it is also your duty to take part in governance. Read the Constitution, and when it is time to appear before the National Assembly, go there and make your submissions. That is what I can say to the people.
The Constitution is quite a broad document, and there is so much that we would love to unpack. Do join us on more series and more episodes of Raw Discourse, as we will be getting into the nitty-gritties of certain laws that have been mentioned here and how they affect you and I and how we live in society. For now, this has been Lubumbe Kayuni, and thank you so much for joining us on Raw Discourse. I have had with me Legal Counsel John Kayuni, who is Managing Partner at JK and Partners. Thank you, and we hope to see you on the next episode.